Well, we begin with breaking news from Iraq, where the Prime Minister-designate has resigned, the second to do so since anti-government protests began back in October. Adnan al-Zurfi had until April 15th to form a new government, but there was mounting opposition from some parties to his candidacy. Well, let's go straight now to Simona Foltyn, who's live for us in Baghdad. Simona, talk us through what's prompted all of this.
Well, Adnan al-Zurfi became the second person to withdraw his candidacy for the prime minister post in just 6 weeks. And of course, this comes amid a months-long leadership crisis in Iraq that we have seen unfold since December, really, when caretaker Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi was forced to resign amid widespread government protests. Since then, we have observed that the political establishment has struggled to come up with a candidate that is acceptable to all of the political factions and that also has support from the protesters who have been asking for systematic change. Now, Adnan al-Zurfi specifically, he faced a lot of opposition from some of the Iranian-backed groups who saw him as being very close to the United States. They then came up with their own proposal for a prime minister, a man called Mustafa al-Kadhimi. He is currently the chief of the intelligence service. What is ironic that he too is seen as somebody who is rather close to the United States, but he has now been put forth as an alternative to Zurfi. He has apparently secured the support of several political parties from across the spectrum, including Shia, Sunni and Kurds. And he is at the moment at the presidential palace being nominated as the next prime minister designate to be tasked with forming a new government.
And Simona, after all of these months of demonstrations that we saw, where does all of this now leave the protest movement itself?
Well, the protest movement is, one could say, almost extinct. And this is in part because there is currently a curfew in place due to the coronavirus pandemic. There are only a few dozen protesters in Tahrir Square, which has been the epicenter of the protest. But of course, if you look back over the past few months, that protest movement has been gradually weakened due to various reasons. And if you go back to the demands that the protesters put forth, they really wanted a complete overhaul of the political system. They wanted a head of state who was not beholden to any political interest, somebody who was a new figure, a new face, who could really bring about far-reaching change. And that has not really been the case with any of the nominees that have been put forward. You have Mustafa al-Kadhimi, now the latest prime minister designate, and he too is part of the establishment because he is currently the head of the intelligence service. So it very much appears that the status quo will remain, and many people even feel that caretaker Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi may actually remain in place if the political factions fail to agree on a replacement. There is a growing feeling now that Adel Abdul Mahdi may actually weather this political storm and remain in power until the next elections in 2022.
Simona Foltyn, there live for us in Baghdad with all those latest developments. Thank you, Simona.